342 bodies. Commander Rachel Voss stood in the wreckage of Research Station Alpha 7, trying to remember how to breathe. The air tasted like ash and burned polymer. Emergency lights flickered red across walls that used to be white, used to be clean, used to be safe. 86 of them were children. Her boots crunched on debris, glass, metal, things she didn't want to identify. The station's main corridor stretched before her like a wound carved through steel. She'd walked similar corridors in Syria in the Sahara conflicts, in places where war turned buildings into graves. But never like this. Never with the bodies so small. Rachel's tactical scanner showed 428 life signs when the station went silent. Now it showed one. Hers. She found him in Botanical Lab 3. David Voss lay beneath a collapsed observation deck, his research tablet still clutched in one hand. 28 years old. Her baby brother. The one who chose plants over violence, science over soldiers, hope over everything Rachel had spent 2 decades fighting for. The tablet's screen was cracked, but still glowing. Rachel's hands shook as she pulled it free. Her brother's final entry was a video timestamp 11 minutes and 30 seconds before the emergency broadcast ended. David's face filled the screen. Young, terrified, alive. "They're not stopping," his voice cracked. 3 ships. Vakari warships. They said this was a research station. Civilian. But they're not listening. They're targeting the Wishu. The video white flashed. Static, silence. Rachel replayed it, watched her brother die again and again, trying to find something she missed. Some detail that would make this make sense. The tactical scanner chirped. 3 contacts. Vakari signatures. Distance 400 kilometers and closing. Patrol ships coming back to confirm the kill. Rachel stood. Her armor's heads-up display painted targeting solutions across her vision, but she was alone, unarmed, except for her sidearms standing in a tomb of 428 people who'd come to Alpha Centauri to study alien plants and map distant stars and build something beautiful at the edge of human space. The scanner showed 11 minutes to contact, exactly how long it had taken them to kill everyone the first time. Rachel activated her emergency beacon. Earth defense would get the signal in 6 hours. The recovery team would arrive in 3 days. By then, she'd either be evacuated by the prowling human destroyer on the system's edge, or she'd be Body 343. She looked at her brother one last time, memorized his face, made a promise she intended to keep. Then she ran. Behind her through the shattered viewports, 3 Vakari warships descended through Alpha Centauri's atmosphere like falling stars. They didn't know she was still alive. Didn't know someone had witnessed. Didn't know they'd just made the worst mistake in their empire's 3,000-year history. They would learn, but first Rachel had to survive long enough to make them pay. The question everyone would ask later in the war councils and command centers and history texts was simple. Why did the Vakari attack? The answer was 3 months earlier and 15 light years away and involved a man who didn't know he'd just declared war. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Conclave was designed to make you feel small. Captain Marcus Webb felt it working. The chamber curved upward like the inside of a pearl, its walls alive with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with each speaker's words. 30 different alien species filled the tiered seating, their forms ranging from crystalline geometries to flowing masses of tentacles to things Marcus's brain couldn't quite categorize. The air hummed with translation fields, turning the cacophony of voices into something almost comprehensible. Marcus stood at the central podium, representing 8.3 billion humans, who'd been playing with faster-than-light travel for exactly 5 years. Babies, that's what they were to everyone here. Cosmic toddlers stumbling into a conversation that had been happening for millennia. Lieutenant Kara Thorne stood 3 steps behind him, her role as cultural liaison, meaning she was supposed to stop him from accidentally insulting anyone. So far, she'd prevented 2 diplomatic incidents and 1 near disaster involving the crystalline concordat's sensitivity to direct eye contact. Marcus had practiced his speech for 6 weeks, memorized every word, rehearsed every pause. The speech that would introduce humanity to the galactic community as partners, not pets. As equals, not children. He never got to finish the first paragraph. Honorable members of the Galactic Conclave, Marcus began, his voice steady despite his heart trying to punch through his ribcage. Earth extends its hand in friendship and peaceful cooperation. We may be new to the stars, but humans have much to offer. Our art, our science, our unique perspective on enough. The word cut through the translation fields like a knife through silk. Every conversation in the hall stopped. Marcus watched 30 different species turn to look at the same point in the assembly, the Vicari delegation. General Krax rose from his seat with the fluid grace of a predator deciding whether you were worth eating. 8 feet tall, 4 arms, each ending in clawed hands that could crush human bone without effort. Scales like obsidian catching the bioluminescent light. Yellow eyes that had seen 1,000 battles and won them all. Marcus had been briefed on the Vicari Empire. 15 star systems, 847 warships. A military tradition stretching back 3,000 years. They'd built their civilization on conquest and never apologized for it. Cracks descended the steps toward the central floor, each footfall echoing in the sudden silence. "We have studied your species," Cracks said as translator, making his voice sound like stones grinding together. "You are nothing but primitive primates who stumbled into technology you barely understand." Marcus felt Kara tense behind him, felt his own anger rising like heat up his spine. But he'd been a fighter pilot for 12 years before they made him a diplomat. He knew how to keep his face calm when everything inside wanted to burn. "With respect, General," Marcus said, each word carefully measured. "We came here to build relationships, not to be insulted." The Vicari delegation laughed. It was an ugly sound like metal tearing. Cracks moved closer. Marcus held his ground. Around the hall, other species were backing away. The Lyran delegates pulled their children behind them. The Rax representatives started closing their environmental suits. The jellyfish-like speaker of the conclave floated higher in its gravity bubble, as if distance might provide safety. Something was wrong. Marcus didn't know what, but his combat instincts were screaming warnings his diplomatic training couldn't interpret. "You think you deserve respect?" Cracks towered over him, now close enough that Marcus could smell something sharp and chemical from his breath. "Your people spent most of their history killing each other over patches of dirt smaller than my ship. You are violent, short-lived, and weak." Marcus took a breath, kept his voice level. "We have made mistakes, yes, but we have learned from them. We seek peace." Peace. Cracks leaned down until his face was inches from Marcus's. "Your history shows you don't even know the meaning of the word." Then he did something Marcus would replay in his mind 1,000 times, trying to understand. General Cracks gathered thick green fluid in his throat and spat directly into Marcus's face. The substance was warm, viscous. It dripped down Marcus's cheek over his uniform pulled at his collar. Marcus wiped it away slowly, fighting every instinct that screamed at him to respond with force. 12 years as a fighter pilot. He'd faced surface-to-air missiles over the Pacific, engine failures at Mach 2 ejection sequences that should have killed him. He knew how to stay calm when death was breathing in his face. "In my culture," Marcus said quietly, "that would be considered extremely rude." What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't know because Earth had been part of the galactic community for less than a decade, was that in Vicari culture, spitting on someone wasn't rude. It was a formal declaration of war. The other delegates knew. That's why they were backing away. That's why the Lyrans were shielding their young. That's why Professor Aaron, the ancient Galarian observer who'd witnessed 800 years of galactic history, was frantically trying to push through the crowd toward Marcus. "Captain Webb?" Aaron's voice was drowned by the sudden blaring of alarms. Kara grabbed Marcus's arm. "Sir, something's—" The station shook. Emergency lights blazed red. The translation fields collapsed into static. Marcus's communicator crackled to life. Lieutenant David Kim's voice tight with controlled panic. "Captain, 3 Vicari warships just dropped in from hyperspace. They're locking weapons on the Endeavor. They're locking weapons on us." Marcus stared at General Cracks. The Vicari's face showed no surprise, no shock, no confusion, because this wasn't a surprise attack. This was the plan. All Earth personnel. Marcus grabbed his communicator, started running toward the exit. "Evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. Get to the ship. Get to the ship now." The Grand Hall erupted into chaos, species scattering in every direction. Some trying to help, most trying to escape. Marcus ran Kara beside him, dodging tentacles and crystalline limbs and creatures whose panic looked nothing like human fear, but felt exactly the same. Behind them, Marcus heard General Krax's voice through the chaos, calm and satisfied. The Vicari Empire does not negotiate with lesser beings. They'd planned this, every second of it. The insult, the spit, the attack. They'd known exactly what they were doing. Marcus had walked into a trap and he'd taken all of humanity with him. The USS Endeavour shuddered under weapons fire as Marcus and Kara dove through the airlock. The ship's hull screamed with impacts, energy weapons painting the corridors with emergency lighting. "Bridge report," Marcus shouted, pulling himself up the access ladder. Lieutenant Kim's voice came through the ship's intercom, barely audible over the sound of explosions. "3 Vicari cruisers, sir. Combined firepower 2.4 petawatts. They're targeting our engines. They want us crippled, not dead. They want prisoners," Marcus thought. "They want to prove we're weak." "Engineering, give me everything you have," Marcus ordered, reaching the bridge. "I don't care if the engines burn out. We're leaving." The view screen showed hell. 3 Vicari warships, each 3 times the Endeavor's size, firing in coordinated patterns. The station behind them was already venting atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches. "Captain, we're not going to make it," Kim said. "Engines at 23% capacity, shields down to 18%. We've got hull breaches on decks 3, 7, and 9. Casualties." "How many?" Kim's face went pale. 27 confirmed dead, sir. 15 wounded. 27 people. Crew members Marcus knew by name. Sarah Martinez from Propulsion, who made terrible coffee and brilliant engine modifications. Chen Zhao from Communications, who'd been married for 6 months. Lieutenant Jackson from Security, who just found out his wife was pregnant. Dead because Marcus had accepted a diplomatic mission and didn't understand he was accepting a war. "Emergency jump," Marcus ordered. "Now." "Sir, we haven't calculated." "Now, Lieutenant." The Endeavor's jump drive spun up with a sound like reality tearing. The Vicari ships adjusted their fire, trying to stop the sequence. Energy beams carved through the Endeavor's hull, cutting toward the engine core. Too late. Space folded. The universe inverted. For 3 seconds, that felt like drowning. Marcus existed in the space between places where physics was a suggestion and the human mind wasn't designed to function. Then they were out. Somewhere. Anywhere that wasn't there. Kara was at the communications station, her hands shaking as she pulled up emergency channels. "Captain, I'm receiving a distress signal. It's from Alpha Centauri Research Station." Marcus's blood went cold. On screen, static. Then a voice young and terrified. "Targeting civilians. We're a research station. 428 personnel. They're not stopping. They're targeting the school section. Why are they—" The transmission ended in white noise and screaming. Marcus stared at the screen. At the timestamp, the attack had happened 40 minutes ago, while he was at the conclave, while General Krax was spitting in his face, while Marcus was still trying to understand why. "Get me Earth Defense Command," Marcus said, his voice dead. "Get me everyone. Tell them we're at war." Kara turned and Marcus saw his own horror reflected in her eyes. "Sir, what did we do? What did we do to provoke this?" Marcus had no answer. He'd followed every protocol, said nothing offensive, done everything right, and 455 people were dead because of it. What Marcus didn't know, what he would only learn much later from intercepted Vicari communications and battlefield confessions, and the testimony of one very old alien who tried to warn him, was that he'd done nothing wrong. The Vicari had simply made a calculation. They needed a quick victory to restore their empire's fading prestige. They'd studied the newest FTL-capable species and chosen the one that looked weakest. Humans, no natural weapons, low bone density, primitive technology, a history of fighting each other more than external threats. Perfect targets. General Krax's spit hadn't been an insult gone wrong. It had been a declaration of war in a language Marcus didn't speak. And now, somewhere in the cold mathematics of Vicari military planning, an empire was confident they could crush humanity in 90 days. They were about to learn why confidence kills more soldiers than enemy fire. But first, Earth had to survive long enough to teach them. 3 months after Captain Marcus Webb's face was broadcast across every news network on Earth, wet with alien spit, confused and angry, and looking for answers no one could give. Commander Rachel Voss activated her emergency beacon beneath the ruins of Alpha Centauri Research Station, 3 months after General Crack spat on a human diplomat and signed his empire's death warrant. Now, 3 months after 455 people died and no one understood why. The question Earth was about to answer wasn't, why did they attack? It was, what happens when you declare war on the species that spent 300,000 years being the scariest thing on their planet? The Vicari were about to find out, and they would not enjoy the lesson. The United Earth Defense Council met in a bunker carved 2 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains. 195 nations. One room. For the first time in human history, Marcus Webb stood before them, his uniform still stained with blood from pulling wounded crew members out of the Endeavor's shattered corridors. He'd been a captain 3 months ago, a diplomat, a pilot who'd accidentally started a war he didn't understand. Now he stood before the leaders of every major nation on Earth, and they were looking at him like he had answers. He didn't, but he had numbers. Conclave Station assault. Marcus reported, his voice hoarse from shouting orders during the evacuation. 27 dead, 15 wounded. USS Endeavor sustained 47% structural damage. We barely made it home. The screens behind him lit up with casualty reports. Names scrolling past, too fast to read, too many to memorize. Alpha Centauri Research Station, 342 confirmed dead, 86 of them children. Commander Rachel Voss is the sole survivor. She's being extracted now. Admiral Thomas Kane stood beside Marcus, 58 years old, built like a man who'd spent 4 decades turning violence into a science. He'd retired from Space Force 2 years ago after his son died in the Mars colony riots. They'd pulled him back 3 months ago when humanity needed someone who understood that war wasn't about honor or glory or any of the pretty lies people told themselves. War was about math, kill ratios, resource expenditure, acceptable losses. Kane had spent 40 years doing that math. Now he was about to teach it to an empire that thought humans were easy targets. Mining Colony Titan 7. Kane continued where Marcus left off. Attacked simultaneously with Alpha Centauri, 296 casualties. Mining Colony Ross 128, 222 casualties. Total dead in the first 6 hours, 887 souls. The number hung in the air like smoke. Intelligence assessment. Kane touched the display. Holographic projections filled the center of the room. Vicari warships rotating slowly, their specifications laid bare. The Vicari hacked our military database 3 months ago during what we thought was a cultural exchange. They have our ship designs, our weapons specifications, our tactical doctrine, everything we officially declared to the galactic community. A Chinese general leaned forward. Then we are compromised before we begin. No. Kane's smile was sharp enough to cut. We're exactly where we need to be. They studied what we showed them, not what we hid. Marcus watched Kane work. This was why they'd pulled the old man out of retirement. He didn't just fight wars. He built them from the ground up, piece by piece, turning disadvantage into advantage with the cold precision of a surgeon. Vicari Empire, 15 star systems, 847 documented warships, military traditions spanning 3,000 years. They chose us because we looked weak. Kane paused. They weren't wrong. Earth has 48 operational warships, 3 established colonies. We've had FTL capability for 5 years. By every conventional metric, we should surrender immediately. But we won't. The voice came from the Nigerian delegation. President Amara Okonkwo. Because surrendering to child killers isn't an option humanity knows how to take. The room murmured agreement. Marcus saw it in their faces. Rage, grief, determination that looked like madness from the outside but made perfect sense when your species had just been marked for extermination. Motion on the floor, Kane said. Declaration of war against the Vicari Empire. All in favor. Every hand rose, every single one. Russians and Americans, Chinese and Indians, nations that had been enemies for generations voting unanimously for the first time in recorded history. Unanimous, Kane recorded. First in UN history, let that be noted. He turned to Marcus. Captain Webb, you started this, accidentally. Now I need you to finish it, deliberately. Marcus straightened. Sir, you're promoted to Commodore effective immediately. I'm giving you command of Special Operations Group Lazarus. Your mission was to vicari regret every decision that led them to spit in your face. Understood, sir. What assets do I have? Kane's smile widened. Everything we've been too afraid to use on each other. The lights dimmed. New projections appeared. Weapon systems Marcus had only heard rumors about. Technology that violated treaties Earth had signed with itself, agreements meant to prevent humans from developing tools too terrible to unleash. But treaties were between nations, and the Vicari weren't signatories. For 50 years, Kane said quietly, we built weapons to kill each other. Now we get to use them on something else. Consider it a gift. Marcus stared at the arsenal of horrors humanity had stockpiled against itself. Asteroid-based mass drivers, AI-controlled swarm systems, genetic warfare protocols, tech that made nuclear weapons look merciful by comparison. Sir, Marcus said carefully, some of these violate treaties with humans, Kane interrupted. The Vicari aren't human. They're targets. Learn the difference. Marcus nodded. He'd been a diplomat for 3 months. Before that, he'd been a fighter pilot for 12 years. He understood the language Kane was speaking. One more thing, Kane handed Marcus a data chip. Message we're sending to the Vicari High Command. I want them to read it before their first fleet arrives. Marcus loaded the chip. 5 words appeared on his display. You've made a terrible mistake. Permission to deliver that message personally, sir. Granted, make it hurt. Marcus turned to leave. Kara Thorne fell in step beside him, her role as cultural liaison officially over now that culture had given way to war. Where do we start? She asked. Marcus thought about 887 bodies, about his crew members who'd died because he'd walked into a trap, about 86 children at Alpha Centauri who'd come to space to learn about alien flowers and died screaming instead. We start, Marcus said, by teaching them why humans survived on a planet that spent 300,000 years trying to kill us. Captain James Rourke stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, a destroyer so new the paint still smelled fresh. 40 years old. Combat veteran of the Sahara conflicts. Father to Emma Rourke, age 6, who thought her daddy flew spaceships that explored planets and discovered aliens who might want to be friends. James had let her think that. Better than the truth. His communicator chimed. Marcus Webb's face appeared transmitted from Earth Defense Command. Captain Rourke, I have a mission for you. Sir, 3 Vicari cruisers are patrolling the Perseus sector. Standard formation. They're hunting for our ships trying to find our outer colonies. I need you to engage them. James looked at his tactical display. 3 Vicari cruisers, each one massed 47,000 tons. Combined firepower that could crack a planet's crust. The Defiant massed 8,000 tons and carried weapons designed for surgical strikes, not fleet combat. Engagement parameters, sir. Kill all 3. Minimum acceptable ratio is 3 to 1. You mean 3 of us? I mean 1 of you for 3 of them. This is a volunteer mission, Captain. I'm asking, not ordering. James understood what Marcus wasn't saying. This was a suicide run, a sacrifice play. 1 human ship trading its existence for 3 enemy vessels purely to change the math of how the Vicari calculated acceptable losses. Crew complement, James asked. 85 personnel. I'm forwarding volunteers from other vessels, but no need, sir. I'll ask my people. James cut the transmission, stood, looked at the men and women who'd served with him for 2 years, who trusted him to bring them home safe, who signed up to explore the galaxy and found themselves in a war instead. Listen up, James said. I'm about to ask you something and I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. Commodore Webb has a mission. 3 Vicari cruisers. Our job is to destroy them. All 3. The survival rate for this mission is 0%. We're not coming home. But if we do this right, we take 3 enemy capitals with us and we show the Vicari that humans trade lives for kills, that we're not prey, that every time they take one of us, we cost them more than they can afford. Silence. James watched his crew process what he just said. I'm asking for volunteers. Anyone who doesn't want this mission transfer now. No judgment, no shame. You signed up to explore, not to die in the first year of a war you didn't start. Nobody moved. James waited, gave them time. These were good people, scientists, engineers, explorers. They shouldn't have to make this choice. Lieutenant Sarah Kozlov stood first. Weapons officer, 29 years old. I volunteer, sir. Then his navigator, his engineer, his medical officer. One by one, every member of his crew rose until James was looking at 85 people who'd just chosen to die for strangers. Why? James asked, his voice rough. Kozlov answered, because my sister was on Alpha Centauri, sir. She was a teacher, taught xenobiology to kids who wanted to understand alien life. She died trying to shield her students when the Vicari came. If we don't do this, more sisters die. More teachers. More kids. James nodded, understood. Thank you, all of you. Record your messages. You've got 30 minutes. Say goodbye. Tell them you love them. Make it count. Marcus watched the battle from Earth Defense Command 3 months into the war that everyone said humanity couldn't win. The tactical display showed the Perseus sector in cold blue holographic light. 3 Vicari cruisers patrolling in standard formation 50 kilometers apart. The Defiant approaching on an intercept vector, broadcasting a distress signal. Defiant is in position, Kara reported from the communication station. Vicari are responding. They're laughing, sir. Of course they were. One damaged human destroyer limping through space, asking for mercy. Easy prey. The Vicari commander's voice came through the translation feed, dripping with contempt. Pathetic humans, running already. Marcus's jaw clenched. 3 months ago, General Krax had said something similar before spitting in his face. The Vicari thought humans were cowards because they saw Earth's official military and thought they understood what humanity was capable of. They were about to learn the difference between understanding and wisdom. Defiant, you are weapons-free, Marcus transmitted. Make them regret it. James Rourke's voice came back calm, resolved. Roger that, Commodore. For Emma, for all of them. The battle lasted 11 minutes and 30 seconds, exactly as long as it took the Vicarium to kill everyone at Alpha Centauri. The Defiant didn't fire its weapons immediately. It let the Vicari cruisers close, let them think the kill would be easy. 200 meters, 150, 100. Then James Rourke gave the order Marcus would play for every training class humanity would ever teach about asymmetric warfare. Now, the Defiant released 50 objects from its cargo bay. They looked like debris. Scrap metal, junk blown off a dying ship. They were plasma mines, each one carrying enough explosive force to crack a cruiser's hull. The Vicari commander realized his mistake 1.3 seconds before impact. Not enough time to adjust course. Not enough time to raise shields. Just enough time to understand that he'd been outthought by the species he'd dismissed as primitive. The mines detonated in sequence, creating a chain reaction that turned space into a wall of fire. At the same instant, the Defiant's engines ignited at full burn, not the standard thrust envelope. The prototype overburn sequence that would push the ship to 0.4 C in 18 seconds and destroy the engine core in the process. The Defiant shot forward like a bullet, clearing the blast radius, while the 3 Vicari cruisers tore themselves apart. Their own ammunition cooked off. Their reactors went critical. Their shields collapsed under pressures they weren't designed to handle. 3 Vicari capital ships, 15,000 personnel combined, 3,000 years of military tradition and engineering excellence, deleted from existence in the time it takes to boil water. The Defiant's engine exploded 40 seconds later. The ship broke apart, scattering debris across the Perseus sector like seeds. James Rourke's final transmission was 6 words: trade complete, 1 for 3, tell a static. Marcus stood into the command center watching the tactical display update. 3 red icons blinked offline. 1 blue icon faded to gray. 85 people, 85 volunteers who'd known exactly what they were signing up for. He thought about Emma Rourke, who'd wake up tomorrow and learn her father was gone. Who'd grow up knowing he chose to die so she could live in a universe where humanity wasn't prey. Log it, Marcus said quietly. USS Defiant, 85 crew, destroyed 3 Vicari cruisers, kill ratio 3-1. Tactical success. Strategic impact. The Vicari now know we trade our lives to kill them. Kara turned from her station, her eyes red. Sir, we're intercepting Vicari communications. They're panicking. This is the first time they've used the word dangerous about humans. Good, let them panic. Let them start to understand that the species they'd chosen to exterminate had spent its entire evolutionary history being the most dangerous thing on a planet that specialized in creating nightmares. Admiral Kane entered the command center, his face grim but satisfied. It's working. Vakari High Command is revising their war timeline. They thought 90 days to human surrender. Now they're estimating 2 years minimum. That's not long enough, Marcus said. We need them to understand this isn't a war they can win. It's a war they need to end. Then we escalate. Show me your mobilization numbers. Marcus pulled up the global production data. 3 months of every nation on Earth converting its industrial base to total war. The numbers were impossible. Detroit auto factories producing 1 warship every 3.2 days. Pre-war production time 6 months. Beijing aerospace complexes churning out fighter craft at rates that made the Second World War look restrained. Mumbai, fabrication centers, São Paulo shipyards, Lagos, manufacturing hubs, Sydney tech facilities. Every city, every factory, every resource. Humanity's official military 3 months ago, 48 warships. Humanity's fleet today, 341 warships and growing. How? Kane asked, genuinely curious. How did we build this fast? Marcus thought about it. About the families working 18-hour shifts. About retired engineers coming back to assembly lines. About teenagers learning to weld hull plates and grandmothers programming targeting computers. About a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of organized violence, finally pointing all that expertise in the same direction. Because we're good at war, Marcus said simply. We've been practicing on each other for our entire history. The Vicari gave us a common enemy. We just redirected. Kane studied the production graphs. Brazilian drone swarms, Russian AI tactical systems, Chinese railgun satellites, American asteroid defense platforms. Every nation is sharing technology they kept secret for decades. They're not secrets anymore, Marcus said. They're weapons, and we're about to teach the Vicari why humans are the only species that weaponizes everything we touch. The communicator chimed. Rachel Voss's face appeared transmitted from somewhere deep in Vicari-occupied space. Commodore Webb, Ghost Squad reporting. We have a target. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Rachel had volunteered for deep operations 3 weeks after Alpha Centauri. After she'd identified her brother's body and attended a memorial service for 428 people, and realized that grief without action was just another way of dying. Report, Commander. Vicari Supply Convoy, Planet Nexus 7, 6 heavy transports carrying weapons for an assault on Earth orbital platforms, 85 soldiers, standard patrol pattern. They're 48 hours from delivery. Intercept timeline. We've been tracking them for 5 days. Ghost Squad is in position, 12 operators, 0 resupply. We're running on local resources and spite. 5 days. Marcus pulled up the operational parameters for deep insertion teams. Standard doctrine said 3 days maximum before exhaustion made combat ineffective. Commander, your team needs rest. Rachel's smile was sharp. Sir, we're humans. We don't need rest. We need targets. Marcus understood what she wasn't saying, understood the biology that made his species unique in the galaxy. Persistence hunters, endurance predators. The ape that could chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion, then do it again tomorrow. The Vicari needed 8-hour sleep cycles to function. Their biology demanded it. Without proper rest, their motor skills degraded, their decision-making failed, their combat effectiveness plummeted. Humans could operate on 4 hours, could stay awake for 72 hours in combat conditions and still complete complex missions, could function through exhaustion that would kill most species because evolution had spent 300,000 years teaching them that the animal that gives up first dies hungry. Authorization granted, Marcus said. Hit them hard. Make it hurt. With pleasure, sir. Ghost Squad out. The screen went dark. Kane looked at Marcus with something approaching respect. You're learning, the Admiral said. 3 months ago, you were training to make peace. Now you're ordering strikes that violate half the galactic warfare conventions. They killed children, Marcus said flatly. Their conventions died with them. Good. Hold that thought. Because what comes next makes Rachel's op look merciful. Kane pulled up a new projection. Earth's solar system, every planet, every moon, every asteroid and satellite and piece of space debris larger than a basketball. And hidden among them, 500 weapons platforms disguised as mining operations, 847 satellites that weren't satellites, 2,300 pieces of orbital debris that were actually autonomous attack drones. Project Sleeping Dragon, Kane said quietly, built over 30 years by every major nation, each thinking they were the only ones doing it. Turns out we were all paranoid together. When we shared our secrets 3 months ago, we found out Earth's solar system is actually the most heavily fortified position in known space. We just never activated it because we were too busy pointing the guns at each other. Marcus stared at the display, at the absurd, beautiful, terrible truth that humanity had accidentally turned its home system into a fortress while planning to fight each other. When do we activate? When the Vicari come here. And they will. They'll want to strike at our homeworld, prove they can hurt us where we live, break our will to fight. And when they do, Kane's smile was cold, we show them what happens when prey decides to stop running. Rachel Voss lay in purple grass 400 meters from the Vicari convoy, her breathing so controlled it barely moved her chest. 48 hours of tracking, 120 kilometers of movement through terrain that wanted to kill her. Local plants that were mildly poisonous to Vicari biology, but potentially lethal to humans. She'd eaten them anyway because starving was worse than dying slowly. Ghost Squad lay in position around the convoy route. 12 operators, all volunteers, all people who'd lost someone at Alpha Centauri or Titan 7 or Ross 128. Sergeant Kira Valdez, former Olympic marathoner, who'd run 42 kilometers in full combat gear to reach the flanking position. Corporal Brandon Shaw, Montana hunter, whose sniper rifle could reach out 800 meters and put rounds through Vicari armor like paper. They'd been awake for 67 hours. Standard doctrine said they should be hallucinating by now. Combat ineffective, dangerous to themselves. But humans didn't follow standard doctrine because standard doctrine was written for species that evolved in environments that didn't try to kill them every day. Target convoy approaching, Rachel whispered into her comm. 6 vehicles, 85 hostiles by thermal count. They're maintaining formation, speed consistent. They don't know we're here. Because why would they? Magosti's squad had left no trail, made no noise, existed as patient predators waiting for prey to make the fatal mistake of assuming safety. The Vicari guards were rotating shifts. Rachel watched them through her scope, saw the exhaustion in their movements. They'd been on duty for 6 hours. Their biology was starting to demand rest. In 2 more hours, they'd be struggling to stay alert. Humans could wait. Hold position, Rachel ordered. Let them wear themselves out. We move when they're too tired to fight back. Kira's voice came back. Copy. We've got food, water, and all the time in the world. Except they didn't have food. They'd run out 3 days ago. Didn't have water except what they could filter from local sources. Didn't have anything except determination and the biological reality that humans could endure. Marcus's voice crackled through Rachel's secure channel. Commander Voss, you have authorization. Hit them hard. Rachel smiled in the darkness. Understood, Commodore. For David, for all of them. She waited. Watched the Vicari guards start to nod. Saw their movements get sloppy. Saw evolution betraying them the way it had betrayed 1,000 species that never learned the most important lesson. The most dangerous predator is the one that can wait. At hour 71 of operation, when the Vicari guards were half asleep at their posts, Rachel gave the order. Ghost Squad, execute. What happened next lasted 12 minutes. It would be studied in military academies for generations, analyzed, dissected, turned into doctrine. 12 humans against 85 Vicari soldiers. 0 human casualties. 85 Vicari casualties. Because while the Vicari had been trained to fight, humans had evolved to hunt. And there's a difference between those two things that no amount of technology can bridge. When it was over, Rachel stood among the burning wreckage of the convoy and looked up at the alien stars. Marcus Webb, she transmitted. Mission accomplished. Convoy destroyed. Weapons secured. 0 friendly casualties. The Vicari are learning what it means to be prey. Somewhere in Vicari High Command, Field Marshal Dorn read the battle report and understood for the first time that his species had made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't fighting a war. They were hunting. And on Earth, in a bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Marcus Webb looked at the casualty ratios and kill counts and strategic assessments and knew with absolute certainty that the Vicari would come for humanity's homeworld next. They would come with everything they had. And when they did, they would learn the most important lesson any predator can teach: never, ever, corner prey in its own den. 8 months into the war, the Vicari came for Earth. Commander Patricia Hayes watched them arrive on the long-range sensors 2 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains in a command center that had been designed to survive nuclear war and was about to face something worse. 214 warships. They dropped from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a hammer falling. Fleet Admiral Krell's flagship led the formation 15 kilometers of Vicari engineering designed to crack planets and break civilizations. Patricia had run the Mars colonization program for 6 years, had managed disasters ranging from reactor failures to atmospheric breaches, had learned that Murphy's Law wasn't a joke, it was a survival manual. Always have 3 backup plans. Always assume the worst. Always prepare for the universe to try killing you in ways you haven't imagined yet. She'd been preparing for this day since Alpha Centauri. "Time to Earth orbit," she asked, her voice steady despite her heart trying to break her ribs. 6 hours at current velocity, her tactical officer reported. "They're not hiding. They're not being subtle. They want us to see them coming." Patricia understood the psychology. The Vicari wanted Earth to watch its executioners approach, wanted humanity to feel the weight of those 6 hours, to let fear ferment into panic, to break before the first shot was fired. They didn't understand humans at all. "Activate protocol Sleeping Dragon," Patricia said quietly. The words had weight, history. 8 months of preparation condensed into 4 syllables. Every screen in the command center turned red. Across Earth, from Beijing to Sao Paulo, to Lagos, to Sydney, 8.3 billion people received the same alert on every device they owned. This is not a drill. Dragon is active. Humanity had practiced for this moment, drilled it, run simulations until the movements became muscle memory. Now they did it for real. In orbit above Earth, civilian space stations transformed. Construction scaffolding retracted, revealing weapons batteries. Mining equipment folded away, exposing missile tubes. Tourist viewports sealed behind armored shutters. On Earth's moon and the asteroid belt scattered across Mars and the outer planets, systems came online that had been waiting 30 years to wake up. 500 mining operations that weren't mining anything revealed their true nature: mass driver platforms capable of throwing tungsten rods at relativistic speeds. 847 satellites stopped pretending to monitor weather and started targeting enemy warships. 2,300 pieces of orbital debris. The junk humanity had been too lazy to clean up for decades activated autonomous guidance systems and became a swarm of attack drones. Patricia watched Earth's defense grid paint itself across her tactical display. Watched the solar system transform from a collection of colonies into the most heavily fortified position in known space. Admiral Kane stood beside her, his face showing no emotion. "How long did we keep this secret?" 30 years, sir. Every major nation thought they were the only ones building hidden defenses. Turns out we were all paranoid together." "Good," Kane smiled. "Paranoia keeps you alive. Overconfidence gets you killed. The Vicari are about to learn that lesson." The command center's main screen showed Fleet Admiral Krell's face transmitted across all frequencies. Broadcast to Earth, to the colonies, to every human ship in the system. "People of Earth," Krell's translator made his voice sound like grinding stone. "Your military is pathetic. Your defenses are primitive. Surrender now and we will be merciful. Resist and we will turn your planet into a monument to your foolishness." Patricia cut the transmission, looked at Kane. "Response, sir. Show him what happens when you threaten a human's home." Patricia opened a channel. Her voice would reach every Vicari ship in the attacking fleet. "Fleet Admiral Krell, I am Commander Patricia Hayes of Earth Defense. You murdered 86 children at Alpha Centauri. You declared war on a species you didn't understand. You came to our home expecting fear." She paused, let the silence stretch. "You should have brought more ships." Then she gave the order that would be taught in every military academy humanity would ever build. "All batteries, fire." Space around Earth erupted. 500 mass drivers fired simultaneously. Tungsten rods accelerated to 0.8, crossing the distance to the Vicari fleet in seconds. Each impact released kinetic energy, equivalent to a tactical nuclear weapon. 847 satellites launched missiles. Not the primitive chemical rockets of old Earth, but hunter-killer systems with adaptive AI that learned from every miss, in every dodge, every defensive maneuver the Valkyrie attempted. 300 attack drones swarmed forward like angry hornets, overwhelming Valkyrie point defense systems through sheer numbers. The Valkyrie fleet had expected to face 52 human warships. They were facing 3,600 individual threats, all coordinated, all lethal, all operated by a species that had spent 50 years planning to kill each other and finally found a better target. Fleet Admiral Krell watched his tactical display turn red. "This is impossible." Intelligence said. "Intelligence was wrong," his second officer interrupted. "They hid this, all of it. The mining operations, the satellites, the debris field. It's all weapons. The entire solar system is a trap." Then something worse happened. Civilian ships joined the battle. Cargo haulers dumped their cargoes and rammed Valkyrie cruisers, their crews evacuating via emergency pods seconds before impact. Mining vessels, real ones this time, activated equipment designed to crack asteroids and pointed it at enemy hulls instead. The passenger liner Prometheus, scheduled for a pleasure cruise to Europa, evacuated its 300 tourists and drove itself into Fleet Admiral Krell's flagship bridge at 0.2 C. The pilot was Nathaniel Garrett, 67 years old, retired engineer, father to Lieutenant Kara Thorne, who'd been Marcus Webb's cultural liaison at the conclave. His final transmission was 7 words for Kara, for the 86 children. The flagship's bridge vaporized. Krell survived in an auxiliary command center, but 3,000 of his crew didn't, and he started to understand what humans were. "Fall back," Krell ordered, his voice shaking for the first time in 40 years of military service. "All ships, emergency jump. Fall back now." But the human attack wasn't designed to destroy, it was designed to cripple, to maim, to let survivors escape so they could tell stories. Of the 214 Valkyrie warships that attacked Earth, 168 were destroyed in 2 hours of combat. 46 managed to jump to hyperspace, trailing debris and radiation, carrying 15,000 survivors who would spend the rest of their lives remembering the day they learned that prey can have teeth. Earth's casualties: 22 military vessels, 35 civilian ships, 3,047 souls. The math was brutal. But the message was clear. Patricia Hayes stood in the command center watching casualty reports scroll past. Recognized names: Nathaniel Garrett, Captain Susan Rodriguez, Lieutenant Michael Zhao. People she'd worked with, trained with, lost. She allowed herself 30 seconds to grieve. Then she opened a channel to Earth Defense Command, where Admiral Kane and Commodore Marcus Webb were already planning the next phase. "Admiral, the Valkyrie know they can't take Earth. They'll retreat to their homeworld. Dig in, make us come to them." Kane's face filled the screen. "Then we go to them." "Webb, are you ready?" Marcus appeared beside Kane. 8 months into the war, he didn't look like the diplomat who'd walked into the conclave. He looked like what he'd become, a weapon humanity had spent 8 months sharpening. "Sir, fleet is assembled. 537 warships. We can blockade Valkyrie Prime, cut off their supply lines, force surrender through attrition." "Attrition takes years," Kane said. "We don't have years. We need to end this, now, while we have momentum, while they're afraid." Marcus nodded, understood what Kane wasn't saying. Wars weren't won by killing the enemy. They were won by breaking the enemy's will to fight. And you couldn't break will from orbit. You had to get close. "I'm assembling an infiltration team," Marcus said. "Destination Valkyrie Prime. Mission obtains surrender codes. End the war without destroying their homeworld." Kane studied him. "You're volunteering." "I started this at the conclave. I finish it in their capital." "You're too valuable to risk on." "I'm the one who got spat on, sir. I'm the one who represents everything they thought was weak. I need to be the one standing in their palace when they surrender. It's not about tactics, it's about symbolism." Kane considered, nodded. "Who else?" "Lieutenant Kara Thorne. The Galarian observer, Professor Aaron. He knows their culture, their palace layout. 10 special operators from Ghost Squad. We go in quiet, get the codes, get out. And if they have defenses you can't bypass." Marcus smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Then we improvise. Humans are good at that. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Vicari home system like a storm made solid. 537 warships. Every major shipyard humanity had built over 8 months. Every alliance they'd forged with species who'd suffered under Vicari aggression. The Lyrans contributed 47 ships. The Racks gave 38. The Collectors provided intelligence that made the whole operation possible. But the core was human. 452 vessels built by every nation on Earth, crewed by volunteers who'd seen Alpha Centauri and Earth's near destruction and decided that surrender wasn't in their vocabulary. Marcus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Carrier Group Commander, now watching Vicari Prime fill the view screen. Population 340 million. Capital of an empire that had lasted 3,000 years. It was beautiful. Crystalline towers catching the light of twin suns. Orbital platforms like jewelry around a blue-green world. Cities that sprawled across continents, monuments to achievement in art and culture. Marcus thought about Alpha Centauri, about 86 children who'd never see another sunrise, about 428 researchers who died for the crime of studying alien plants. Blockade formation, he ordered. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. We wait for their response. Admiral Kane's voice came through the comm. Webb, you're clear to launch. Ghost Team Alpha is ready for insertion. Marcus turned to Kara Thorne. 8 months ago, she'd been a linguist trying to prevent diplomatic incidents. Now she was a combat operator who'd learned 14 alien languages and could hack Vicari security systems in her sleep. Ready, Marcus asked, to sneak into an imperial palace, steal military secrets, and probably die trying. Kara smiled. Just another Tuesday. Their insertion ship was barely larger than a shuttle. Stealth coding, minimal emissions. It would shadow a commercial freighter through Vicari Prime's orbital defenses land in an industrial district 50 kilometers from the Imperial Palace. Simple, clean, suicidal. Professor Aaron floated in his gravity bubble, the ancient Galarian's voice thin with age and concern. Captain Webb, I must warn you, the palace has security systems designed to stop armies. 12 humans will not. 12 humans, Marcus interrupted gently. Just beat an empire in 8 months. We'll manage. The insertion went perfectly until it didn't. They shadowed the freighter, matched its approach vector, separated at the last second, and landed in an industrial complex that processed Vicari atmospheric filtration systems. Guards were minimal. Security was lax. Why wouldn't it be the Empire's capital? 15 light-years from the war, protected by 127 defensive platforms and a fleet of 89 warships. Except those 89 warships were currently facing 537 human vessels, and the defensive platforms were designed to stop external threats, not infiltrators who'd already landed. Marcus's team moved through Vicari Prime wearing stolen maintenance uniforms, their faces hidden behind environmental suits that were close enough to standard that nobody looked twice. Kara had done the impossible, learned to speak Vicari like a native. When security checkpoints questioned them, she answered with the bored efficiency of workers who'd been doing this job for years. Atmospheric filtration maintenance, Section 7, authorization code Theta 9. It worked because it was simple, because infiltration wasn't about being invisible, it was about being boring. They reached the Palace District 47 minutes after landing. The Imperial Palace rose before them like a mountain carved from crystal, its spires touching clouds, its base spanning 10 square kilometers. How do we get in? One of Marcus's operators asked. Professor Aron's voice crackled through their secure comms. Service entrance, southeast quadrant. I used it 500 years ago when I studied Vicari culture. It should still there, Kara confirmed, scanning the building. And unguarded. They really don't expect anyone to be this stupid. They were inside in 8 minutes. The palace was a maze of corridors and chambers built over 1,000 years, each emperor adding their own architectural flourishes. Marcus followed Aron's directions, descended 3 levels, reached a sub-basement where military command systems were housed. This is it, Kara whispered, her fingers flying over a Vicari security terminal. I'm in, accessing surrender protocols, looking for Emperor Valdros's command codes. Marcus watched her work. 8 months ago, she'd been a linguist who'd never held a weapon. Now she was hacking an empire's most secure systems, while 12 floors above them, the emperor who'd ordered Alpha Centauri's destruction sat on his throne, confident in his invincibility. Marcus, Kara's voice went cold. I found something. It's not surrender codes. She pulled up files, schematics, weapons specifications. Marcus read them and felt his blood freeze. What am I looking at when we void catalyst? It's a doomsday weapon, creates a chain reaction that destroys star systems. Plural. The target list includes Vicari Prime and 2 neighboring inhabited systems. Estimated casualties 40 billion, and including 340 million Vicari civilians on this planet. Why would they build a weapon that kills their own people? Professor Aaron answered, his ancient voice heavy. Because Emperor Valdros would rather destroy everything than admit defeat. If he cannot have victory, no one will have anything. Marcus stared at the activation sequence. The weapon was armed, ready, could be triggered remotely from the Emperor's throne room with a single command. He opened a channel to Admiral Kane. Sir, we have a problem. Kane listened to Marcus's report and understood the nightmare they'd stumbled into. If we attack the palace, Valdros activates the weapon. 40 billion casualties. 3 inhabited systems gone. But if we retreat, the Vicari rebuild in 5 years attack us again with everything they've learned. Future estimated casualties 500 million to 2 billion humans. Marcus's voice came back tense. Sir, there has to be another way. There isn't. This is war. This is what it looks like. Sometimes there are no good choices. Silence on the channel. Then Marcus spoke again, and Kane heard something in his voice that made him pay attention. Permission to try something that might get my team killed, but won't get 40 billion people killed. What do you have in mind? I'm going to talk to the Vicari people, not their emperor, not their military, the civilians. All 340 million of them. I'm going to tell them the truth about what their leaders are planning. Let them decide. Kane considered. It was insane. Unprecedented, violated every galactic warfare convention about psychological operations and civilian manipulation. It was also the only plan that didn't end with mass graves. Do it! You have 30 minutes before Valdros realizes you're in his palace. Marcus cut the channel, looked at Kara. Can you hack into their planetary broadcast system? Their entire network, every screen on the planet. Kara's fingers were already moving. Yeah, give me 15 minutes. Marcus spent those 15 minutes writing a speech, not in English, in Vicari. Professor Aaron helped with the nuances, the cultural context, the phrases that would resonate. When Kara gave him the signal, Marcus stood before a camera in a sub-basement, beneath the Imperial Palace, and began the speech that would change galactic history. People of Vicari Prime, my name is Captain Marcus Webb of Earth. I am broadcasting from inside your Imperial Palace. On screens across the planet, in homes and markets, in schools and public squares, 340 million Vicari civilians saw a human face for the first time, saw the alien their leaders had told them was weak and primitive. Marcus showed them the palace command center behind him, proved he was really there. Your leaders told you we were easy targets, that we would surrender quickly. They were wrong. He showed footage. Alpha Centauri, the children's section of the research station. Bodies too small. Your military attacked our civilians, killed 86 children. We fought back. Battle footage. Earth's defense. The defiant sacrifice. Rachel Voss's guerrilla operations. 8 months of war condensed into 3 minutes of brutal truth. Now your fleet is destroyed, your empire is blockaded, but your emperor has one final plan. Marcus displayed the void catalyst schematics. This weapon will kill 40 billion people, including all of you, your families, your children, your entire world. Emperor Valdros would rather destroy you than admit defeat. He let that sink in, let 340 million people process that their own leader was willing to murder them to save his pride. You have a choice. Continue following leaders who will kill you, or take control of your own future. Marcus paused. This was the moment, the turning point. We didn't come here to exterminate you. We came to end a war your leaders started. We could destroy this planet. We have the firepower. We have the justification. 86 children died screaming. His voice went quiet, gentle. But we won't, because if we did, we'd become what we're fighting against. So the choice is yours. Choose quickly. My fleet won't wait forever. The broadcast ended. Marcus stood in the sub-basement surrounded by his team waiting to see if 340 million people would make the choice he needed them to make, or if he'd just signed his own death warrant. On the surface in the Imperial Palace throne room, Emperor Valdros watched the broadcast and felt fear for the first time in his 80-year reign. Silence this human. Find him, activate the void catalyst. General Crack stood beside the throne. The same Vicari who'd spat on Marcus Webb 8 months ago, who'd started this war with confidence and watched it turn into a nightmare. Crax had received reports from Fleet Admiral Krell, had read casualty assessments, had studied human tactics and understood with growing horror that his species had declared war on something they couldn't defeat. Now he looked at the Void Catalyst activation panel and made a choice. He drew his weapon and shot the control system into slag. No, Crack said simply. Valdros stared. What have you done? Saved our people. The war is over. We lost. Accept it. Other generals moved, some toward Crax with weapons drawn, some toward Valdros with the same. The Vicari High Command split down the middle in 5 seconds, and the Empire tore itself apart. Outside in the streets of Vicari Prime's capital city, 2 million civilians marched toward the palace, their voices rising in a chant that had never been heard before on this world. Truth over empire, lives over pride. The gates fell. The guards stood aside. 500,000 Vicari citizens flooded into the palace, and Emperor Valdros learned that power only exists when people choose to obey. Deep beneath the palace, Marcus heard the explosions and knew it had worked. Time to go, he told his team. Our ride's leaving in 3 minutes. They escaped during the chaos, slipped out the same way they came in, reached their shuttle while the Empire collapsed around them. Kara looked at Marcus as they lifted off. Did we just overthrow a government with one speech? We gave them permission to save themselves, Marcus corrected. They did the rest. 6 hours later, General Crack stood before the human fleet and surrendered. Not with defiance, not with pride, with relief. 1 year after Marcus Webb returned to Earth, he stood in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Conclave once again. But this time he wasn't a captain trying to make peace. He was Ambassador Marcus Webb, representing humanity to 30 alien species who now understood exactly what humans were capable of. The vote was 28-2. The Earth-Vicari Alliance Treaty passed into law. Former General Crack sat in the Vicari delegation, exiled from his home but granted asylum on Earth. He met Marcus's eyes across the hall and nodded once. Respect between warriors. Professor Aaron floated beside Marcus, the ancient Galarian, now 801 years old. Remarkable, Aaron whispered. I have witnessed 800 years of history, never seen enemies become allies this quickly. Marcus smiled. We're good at making friends. We just needed to make the right kind of enemies first. After the session, Marcus walked through the conclave gardens, found a young Vicari standing alone staring at a memorial to war casualties. Zeth, isn't it? Marcus recognized him from intelligence reports. 18 years old. Lost his parents in the revolution. Sister saved by human doctors. Ambassador Webb. Zeth turned. I need to ask you something. Go ahead. Why help us? After everything we did, after the children at Alpha Centauri, you had every right to destroy us. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about James Rourke and his daughter Emma, about Rachel Voss and her brother David, about 887 souls who died in the first 6 hours of a war they didn't start. Because, Marcus said finally, we learned something from our own bloody history, that the strongest weapon isn't the one you use, it's the one you choose not to use. We could have killed you all, had the firepower, had the justification. But if we did, we'd become what we were fighting against. What if we rebuild? Zeth asked. What if in 100 years the Vicari attack again? Marcus smiled. Then we'll fight again, but you won't. Because you learned the same lesson we did. What lesson? That war is easy, peace is hard, but only one of them builds something worth keeping. Marcus left Zeth in the garden and returned to his quarters, found a message waiting from Admiral Kane. Well done, Ambassador. You started this war by accident, ended it on purpose. The galaxy won't forget. Marcus thought about the 12,847 humans who died in 8 months of war, about the 89,000 Vakari military casualties, about the 3,200 Vakari civilians caught in crossfire. He thought about Emma Rourke now, 7 years old, growing up in a universe where her father's sacrifice meant something. And he recorded one final message for the history books, for future generations, for anyone who'd ever wonder why humans chose mercy when vengeance would have been easier. They called us the most lethal species in the galaxy. They were right. We spent 300,000 years becoming apex predators on a planet that specialized in creating nightmares. We learned to persistence hunt prey until it collapsed. We learned to turn everything we touched into weapons. We learned that the species willing to sacrifice everything usually wins. But we also learned when to stop, when to choose creation over destruction, when to build instead of burn. The Vakari made a mistake. They saw our bodies and thought we were weak, saw our technology and thought we were primitive, saw our history and thought we were divided. They were wrong about everything except one thing. We are dangerous, the most dangerous species in known space. But danger isn't just about destroying your enemies. It's about choosing not to. It's about having the strength to show mercy when vengeance would be easier. That's what makes humans truly dangerous. Not our weapons, not our persistence, our ability to decide what kind of species we want to be. Today, 18 species stand with us, not because they fear us, because they trust us. And that's a legacy worth more than any victory. Ambassador Marcus Webb closed the recording and looked out at the stars where human ships patrolled alongside former enemies, and thought about a universe where the most dangerous species had learned the hardest lesson, that true strength isn't measured by who you can destroy. It's measured by who you choose to save, even when they don't deserve it, especially then.